And hello, everybody. This is Chuck Horton along with Drew Lamb coming to you live from the state of Jefferson, actually the Jefferson Republic. I keep doing that. And this is on another Thursday secession into this glorious republic. And Drew, welcome tonight.
Hey, Chuck. Hey, everybody in chat. How's it going?
Well, I guess they're not answering. They must not be hooked up. So anyway, we got a lot of things to go over today. We may not get to all of them, but we're going to try our best. And we may have a surprise guest popping in later in the evening. We hope that happens. In the meantime, let's just get started. I've been thinking about this for some time because I'm a homeowner, and I'm just thinking about what's the future going to do to the value of my home. And I've seen it kind of just going all over the place since I purchased it near the top of the bubble, which is, you'd think that somebody as tuned into economics wouldn't make that mistake. But I thought, I'll be really shrewd and I know that this is way too high. I'll just bargain for a better price. It wasn't even close to the better price I should have bargained for. I guess I had no idea it was going to be this severe. Anyway, and I should have realized I had made a mistake when they quickly accepted my offer. Anyway, back to the subject. I'm thinking, what's the future going to bring for the value of my house? Is this something that I recently completed a remodeling project, which I did mostly myself, so there's very little capital outlay. I just did it to make it a more comfortable place, and I like it a lot and all that. I put in very little money into it, just bought some materials, did all the work, almost all the work myself. A couple people helped me here and there with things that I don't have tools for. And anyway, I'm thinking, am I ever going to be able to get the value that I've put in this house back out of it? And I'm thinking probably not in the near future because, I don't know how they're doing it. Well, I actually do know how they're doing it, but I don't know why it's working. I guess it's because its propaganda is really effective, I guess is the answer. But, inflation, really rapid inflation, is being held back by the Federal Reserve without raising interest rates, which is almost like, they're doing it with smoke and mirrors, but they're still doing it. And so you have to kind of respect that, although that respect is very minor compared to the, how much we disrespect them for all the crap they're throwing at us. But I'm just thinking now, if I did have a lot of extra equities, I wouldn't want to put it into real estate right now. I said maybe that would be a good topic for the show. And then I happened to come across an article on Mises.org, which is probably aside from our Facebook page, it's probably my favorite website on the whole internet. And this is, we post a lot of their articles on the Facebook page. So, because they're about economics, I know a lot of you don't read them, but you should read them once in a while, maybe 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4. You'll learn something from almost everyone you read. We don't post the really dry, scholarly lectures, that type things. We post the ones that we think are relevant, that people will understand how they're relevant to themselves. And this one, the guy, Andrew Culkin is the person who wrote this. And I'm going to start with just a quote from the article. It's a good way to get into this topic, I think. He writes, Austrian business cycle theory explains that the bust phase of that cycle is created by extension of cheap and plentiful credit by a fractional reserve banking system. This Federal Reserve System is inherently fragile due to the bust phase as its leverage, that's lending as a percentage of its own capital. As its leverage exposes the banks to the emerging tsunami of non-performing loans and impaired collateral that are the manifestations of malinvestment. Now, to explain that just a little bit, to stimulate the economy, this was actually started by Alan Greenspan. We blame Ben Bernanke, but Alan Greenspan's the guy that originated this. And to start off with, to stimulate the economy after the dot-com bust, the bubble bust and that. So they lowered interest rates the that lower interest rates stirred investments in housing economy, because lowering the interest rates meant everybody would have someone buying a new house would have a lower monthly payment for a bigger house than the one they were living in now. That's a no-brainer. Let's sell the one we're in now and get a new, bigger, better one with all new appliances and granite countertops and all that stuff. Or we'll refinance ours and get that lower interest rate, and we'll take some money out and we'll buy a motorhome or something. And because it's going to be the same payment we had before, and we're going to get a free motorhome. They're going to do something to utilize that lower interest rate. So anyway, what's happening is a lot of the people, and you can call those malinvestments or not, they're people doing what they want to do with their own money. I don't have any problem with that, but what's happening is a lot of other people are seeing there's this increased demand for housing. And so the contractors are taking out bigger and bigger loans. They're building bigger and bigger subdivisions. They're building more houses than we need by millions. And even though, we look back and it's like, well, that was folly. That was foolish of them to do that. At the time, it was, if I don't do this, someone else is going to take this market share away from me. That's kind of their thinking. And so it becomes a malinvestment. They're taking the capital that should be put in other places in the economy, producing things that people actually need, and they're being put into housing that people have more than they need. And because of the lower interest rates, there's a demand. There's people out there flipping houses. They're just buying houses and turning and holding them for a couple of months, and the prices go up enough they're able to flip them. They put hardly anything down, or they put a little bit down, but by the leveraging of that, they're able to make if it goes up 1 or 2% in a couple of months, they're making 20% on their down payment. So then that's all they're trying to do. And they're making 20% every 2 months. That's pretty good return on investment. And these guys don't know anything about what they're doing. They're just going in there, they buy a house, slapping a corner paint on some couple of rooms, and they're not improving it or changing it all, but they're using that there was inflation going on in the housing industry. The houses were going up in value much faster than they should have, and much above what the real value of the houses was. So it's malinvestment. So the lower interest rates cause unnatural demand in the housing market. That's the first thing you have to realize. That you can explain almost everything that happens by supply and demand. And I think that analysts and people that get on the talking head shows, I don't think they spend enough time talking about supply and demand, because that's a basic thing that everybody thinks they understand, but very few people are able to analyze anything in terms of supply and demand. So maybe they really don't understand it. Okay, so we have this unnatural demand in housing market, and because of this, people wanted newer homes. They didn't want to just buy another home. They wanted a bigger home, a newer home, one that had new appliances, one that had new furnishings, one that had all the new designer decorations in it and things like that. So, that increased demand, there's two things that can happen. One, the prices will go up, and the prices go up far enough that will, make the demand go down. But because interest rates were falling at the same time, those rising prices really didn't have any effect on that demand, and so it started to create greater and greater supplies of housing, even more so than they needed. And people were buying houses and leaving a second one unsold just so they could move into that new house, and then hoping and praying that they could sell their other house. Eventually that caught up with them. They'd have two houses going or whatever. So eventually this bubble pops, and predictably the housing prices just collapsed overnight. It was brutal, and people are left with people are left with the house that they've got this mortgage on for, and a lot of them got in on interest only mortgages because they were trying to keep their monthly. They wanted a bigger home, and that was the way they could get even a bigger home, is just go interest only, and they figured they would just wrap it around to something else, and eventually when they sold that other house they had, they could use the equity from that to to wrap it around into a new loan, and then there'd be Fat City and everything, but it just didn't happen. And so now these artificially lowered interest rates they've caused this problem, and they've caused the United States to build millions of houses that they didn't need, and now they have this oversupply. This is supply and demand again. So if you have an oversupply and you need to move these items off the market, you need to, if they have to be sold or something has to liquidated or something, then in order to do that, you have to reduce the price in order to increase demand. And so that's why the prices fall, and they did fall very drastically. In my case, now I didn't pay this price, but I paid more than I should have. So I'm not going to tell you what I paid, but the condominiums where I live were selling for about $300,000 a pop, plus or minus, depending on the square footage of the unit. It was a little over $150 a square foot, and almost overnight, it fell to about $80 a square foot. It took about 6-7 months. It just, bam. That's like almost a 50% reduction in the value of the homes. And then, because they're fairly nice places, they had some appeal as rentals, and the rental income would justify a higher price. The prices started to climb off of that bottom, and now they've come back about half that way. You could call it a dead cat bounce and we're going to talk about it in terms of stock market lingo. But the interest rates are still artificially low. And so this hasn't been a real recovery. This has been, we're still living off of artificially low interest rates. And those interest rates are still below what they naturally or historically should be. And when I say naturally, I mean in a natural market, money that you have today is worth more than money you're going to have in 6 months from now. And so if you have to be separated from that money for 6 months, you need to receive some compensation for not having that use of that money for 6 months. And that's called interest. And historically, that interest rate has been about 6 to 8%. Kind of fluctuates in there depending on the state of the economy. And it's not set by a central bank. That's just in a market economy. That's what it would be at. And there would be some interest rates would be higher than that because there's some people out there with they have kind of not so good credit and they're kind of at risk. So you're going to put premiums on their interest rates. And there's other people that have, AAA gold plated or solid gold credit, and you're going to give them maybe that just a hair, 0.5% under that 6% or something because it's a sure thing. Well, so here we are. We have let's see. We have a case where people, we've had that kind of a false recovery. And the reason it's false again is because of these interest rates are still a problem. And here's why it's a problem. Eventually, they're going to have to do something about all this money that's been printed. And they say they didn't print any money, but they create electronically. It's the same thing. So we're just going to call it money printing because that gives me a visual image of a person walking down the road with a wheelbarrow full of money. And I think that's an important image to keep in your mind because that's kind of what they've done. And they've created money out of nothing. It's caused all these problems to happen, and they haven't stopped doing it really. They're starting to cut back a little bit, but they haven't stopped doing it. And down the road, there's going to be inflation that has to happen because inflation, remember, we talked about this on an earlier show, inflation is not rising prices in all sectors, although that sometimes is a symptom of it. It isn't how you define inflation. Inflation is when you debase the money supply. That's what they've done. They've destroyed the money, the value of the dollar by creating so much more money than they had before. Okay, so they've, in creating this excess money, they made the prices of the houses go up. And by having lowering interest rates is another way of creating excess money because you're letting people have it for a long period of time for almost nothing. Okay, so now there's going to be, as this money is out there circulating the economy, a lot of it's been gobbled up by the banks to use as reserves against their deposits, because they have to have a certain amount of reserves in order to lend money out. That's the fractional reserve system. It doesn't seem to make any sense. It's like having 10% of your deposits in the bank and the other 90% loaned out. Doesn't seem to me to be a secure system at all, but they seem to think that that's prudent. To me, that 100% is prudent. This is kind of a risky venture. But anyway, this money is out there. It's been created, and it's starting to leak into the economy. We're starting to see some prices rise, and it's not going to affect every sector evenly and the same. I think the one thing where we've seen the most action has been in the food markets. Since 2007, I think food has more than doubled. And I just base this on protein costs, and it's hard to get too much of this tied into just the day-to-day prices of commodities like food, because they can have a good harvest one year and a bad harvest the next, and they can have some sickness in the herds, or the meat prices could go up or they could go down because they're trying to reduce the number of cows they have, so they just slaughter a bunch of them, and they have an oversupply for a short period of time. So the prices can go up and down on a short-term basis, but over a long period of time, and I think that 7 years is a long enough period of time, the prices have more than doubled. And so that's telling me that, we got inflation. It's at least double digit in food. We've also seen prices of gas roughly double in that same time. And maybe because we are in a big recession, there's a lot of people unemployed. People are driving less. The lack of demand is keeping the prices from going where they would if we had the same kind of economy we had in 2007. So it's not exact comparison, but there are indications of inflation going on, and Shadow Stats says inflation is probably closer to the 14%, maybe even higher than that. So in order to rein in inflation, because you don't want it to get going much hotter than it is right now, or we're going to end up in a hyperinflationary scenario where when that happens, you have less than a year left, and you're going to be toast as a country. So, in order to slow this down and stop it before it gets to that point, the only thing they can really do now to work as an effective tool to stop this is to raise interest rates and the Federal Reserve, their prime rates. And when this happens, the value of your houses are going to collapse. And this is why. Again, this is a supply and demand equation, but it's based off of another factor. People buy a house, they don't buy it for what it costs, they buy it based on what their monthly payment's going to be. They get paid every month. 25% of that they can go towards a house payment. And if that interest rate goes up, then the principal that they're paying they're paying their principal and interest payment, and most of it's interest, but that if the interest rate goes up, the amount of that loan that they're generating, that interest payment, has to go down in order for the payment to still be within their budget. You can't, you just can't. Well, maybe you could if you didn't eat, but you can't live in a house where 40% of your income is going to a house payment. You're not going to have anything for food or clothing, and taxes going to eat up most of the rest, and you'd be walking back and forth to work. You just can't do it. So people aren't going to be able to afford the more expensive houses. They're going to have to downsize. There's going to be demand for less expensive houses. And the houses that we all malinvested and invested in and bought during the first part of this century, 2000 to 2007, all those houses they're going to lose their value because there's not going to be demand for them. They're too big. They're too fancy. They have too many new things. They have too many designer decorations in them. They're, too much granite countertopping and too much fancy stuff that's put on them to just increase that value because the interest rates were low, and now they're not, and no one can afford them. Well, you're sitting in the house, you say, well, I've got a fixed rate, and I can sit here, my payment's not going to change. Well, and if that's your case, and you're going to be in that same job until the end of that mortgage rate, more power to you. You got a good deal. You can stay in that house, and it's probably going to be a good deal for you as long as you can stay there. But most people stay in their houses for less than 10 years. They get transferred, they move out of town. If parents get sick or the kids are out of the house, whatever, they have whatever reason it comes up, they move. And they're going to be moving out of these big houses, and there aren't going to be any buyers for them. There's going to be a lot of other people trying to sell their big houses, and there just aren't going to be enough people making enough money to buy those because of the house payment, not because of the value of the house. Because if interest rates were still at close to zero, where they are now, a lot of people could afford them. As those interest rates increase, that house payment goes up, and fewer people can afford it. Your market that you're trying to sell it to, vanishes. So I hope this is all making sense. I hope I'm talking in clear enough terms. So you're going to have a huge supply and no demand, and that means the price has to fall in order for their demand to be generated. So the value of your homes are going to decrease, and you want to make sure that for those of you who are going to plan on staying, sticking it out and staying in their house for as long as they can, make sure that you make your tax assessor aware of your drop in value of your property. They don't like to reevaluate you at a lower cost, but that's what's fair. The people buying a new house that's the same size as yours is going to cost a lot less than yours has been assessed at, and you should be assessed at that same level. And that's going to cause city and county governments, state governments that rely on property taxes as part of their income to not meet their expectations. Their projections are going to fail. And no, there aren't any economists out there that are taking this into account. I don't know why, because supply and demand is one of the easiest things to understand in the whole of economics. And it's I don't know. Anyway, yes, Hunt, I love that song. Our house is a very, very fine house. Yes. Okay. So, anyway, that was the first subject for tonight. I just thought that I would share that with everybody. I don't know if it's wisdom or whatever. It certainly isn't fear porn. This is something that's going to happen. It's just going nothing you can do about it. I don't know when it's going to happen. Interest rates will start to creep up. Now they've already started to taper. And what they mean by that, they're not creating as much money out of thin air as they were before. And just the start of doing a little tapering sent shockwaves through the stock market. These are people with lots of money, and that's how important this is to an economy. You can see that they go a big gulp swallow. How are we going to do this without crashing our economy? Well, they're going to try and do it very slowly, get people used to this level, and then they'll cut it back a little bit more and get everybody used to it. Well, see, the ceiling hasn't fallen in yet. We can keep going a little bit more, but the ceiling is falling. It's just falling in slow motion now, and that's just how it is. So, on to the next subject. Drew, do you have anything to add to this?
Well, yeah, I'd like to say that it will affect more than just residential housing prices. It'll also affect multifamily properties as well as commercial properties. Any kind of property, any kind of real estate that's income producing will lose value in a high interest rate situation. And one of the reasons is, of course, it reduces demand. The other is that it affects the discount rate or the capitalization rate that investors use when they're calculating the value of the property. So you always want a positive spread between the cost of your debt and your capitalization rate, which is essentially your rate of return, or what you're working out is the current value of future earnings. And you want a rate of return that's going to compensate you for your risk. And when you're buying income property or investing in something other than a U.S. Treasury bill, you're assuming risk. But that remains to be seen. I mean, it's always been believed that a treasury was a risk-free investment. I don't necessarily believe that anymore, but still, real estate's pretty old school, and the economics of real estate haven't changed much, probably in 100 years. So you'd be seeing the value of properties go down as the interest rates go up, and you'd probably see treasury rates go up, and so that would mean that discount rates would increase as well, which would cause the price of properties to fall because investors would be making offers at a much lower price. And so now in some cases that can create buying opportunities at a certain point when you start to see an upward trend, an improvement in employment, an improvement in the economy, but we're not going to see that. So I don't expect to ever see real estate recover. I mean, you'll see little bubbles here and there. Here in Ashland, we're seeing some condos going up again and stuff. You'll see some isolated situations where the people have access to the easy money, and so they're putting up some things that really don't deserve to exist in this economy. So it's really unfortunate. I'm in the same situation that you're in. I thought that I had nailed the bottom in the market in our region, and I'm a professional. And I bought my house in short sale. I actually bought my home from a neurosurgeon, and in short sale, beat up the bank really good to get a good price. I thought it was a good price, made a really, really good down payment, picked up some fast equity, and I was feeling really good. And then the bottom fell out of the market. So I've lost all of my equity. And so now my house is worth roughly, I don't know, maybe $6,000 more than what I owe on it. So, I don't look at it as an investment anymore. I look at it as a place to live. It's a nice place to live, but, I'll never get my money back. I'll never be able to sell the place for anything more than to pay off the debt. But you don't ever really own your home. I mean, there is a utility value, given that, you could do what you want, but you can't really do anything that you want because you've got, CC&Rs and city codes, and it's encumbered with property taxes. So you don't really own your property. So I really don't see any advantage whatsoever in investing in real estate. And I also own income property too.
I would just qualify that with saying if you have a lot of money and you do need some kind of an income, and you aren't going to work with a loan, you're just going to pay cash. You might be able to get a reasonable rate of return on that money for a while. If things get really bad, I suppose you could trade for food or commodities or whatever.
And you don't have much control over what the property taxes can be.
That's the other thing is you better have some money in the bank for that or something in the stuff in the mattress.
A few years ago over in Deadford, we saw a 12% increase in property taxes due to school bonds that were passed. I think it was all due to school bonds. And that's why we'll be getting to this, but that's why the teacher strike is so irritating. But they decided to replace a bunch of old brick buildings with new brick buildings, and there were these school bonds. And running income property like I do, you figure for about a 3% annual increase in property tax costs, and we got hammered with 12% in an economy where we couldn't absorb that with rent. So, if you think that your landlord is really, really an evil guy, well, he might be, but he also gets screwed pretty hard in situations like that where, the income property owners, there's one guy in particular that owns apartments all over the valley and all over the Rogue Valley. He pays more in property taxes than Bear Creek Corporation. He's the biggest payer of property taxes in Jackson County. So that guy had to have been completely hammered, and there was no way he was able to raise his rents 12%, or he couldn't have even raised his rents 3% at that time. And so then to get hit with that, it is just really, really hard, especially if you've got debt on top of that. You're trying to pay all of your expenses that are constantly going up, in a market where jobs aren't being created, super high unemployment, so rents are depressed. You haven't seen rent growth in over a decade, really. And then you get hammered with increasing property taxes on top of that. So,
and it seems like governments, they seem to buy into all this propaganda that comes flowing down from the sewer line from the Washington D.C. through the state government into the counties governments, but they seem to all buy into that thing that there is a recovery and things are getting better when they really obviously aren't. And so they take that as a reason to go out there and start increasing their spending again and loading more debt and obligations on taxpayers, and they're just destroying their economies. Yeah, it's going to be harder to rent out a place because it's going to be a supply and demand thing. There's going to be empty houses that people will do anything to get them rented. You might be competing with a lot of people that have a lot lower threshold that they're willing to go through than you are. So I just think housing is not a good investment at this point in time. So if any of you were contemplating thinking, well, things are getting better in the housing market, it might be a good time to invest, I would say don't. Okay, I think we've covered that pretty well. I think that was pretty thorough, and I hope that's helpful to people in their decision making, their planning. That's something I've been thinking about for about the last 2 weeks. So this is what bubbled up for the show because of that. So the next thing I had, just a real quick thing, and I hadn't really planned. I didn't put this in my original plan, but I posted a link in the chat. This is a video that was sent to my wife from a friend of hers in Poland, and this video is from a woman in Ukraine who's telling about the violence that's going on there. And I think that what you're getting in the American news is filtered, and I'm not even sure that some of the people who are saying things that aren't on the mainstream media are even telling you things that are truthful things. They may also have agendas they're trying to push. They may be telling the truth. I don't know. I do know that I think there's 70 people that have been killed so far, and that's for sure. It may have been more than that, and some of them are police and some of them are demonstrators, and it doesn't appear like it's going to get better anytime soon. And this is really, 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 really sad, because this is it's like a proxy war between the Russians, who want Ukraine to stay kind of in their sphere of influence, and the EU that wants them to become part of the EU. And Ukraine has seen what's happened to their fellow Eastern European democracies that have joined the EU, and how they've been just decimated by EU policies. They say, no, I don't think so. We're going to pass on this one. Example is I've reported on this show before, the people in Bulgaria. This is just one example. I mean, it happened in all their industries like this, but they were energy independent. They produced all their own electricity. And the EU told them, if you're going to join the EU, you have to close down all these electricity producing facilities because it's too cheap and it's not fair competition with the existing electricity producing facilities in the EU. Plus, they're making too much pollution, all this. So they had to shut down all their electricity stuff, and then the electricity rates go skyrocketing as they get Enron, and so now they can't afford to turn on a light bulb in their house, or they won't be able to eat. And so they're having all sorts of demonstrations in Bulgaria. They've already had one government step down. The next one they're having all sorts of they actually formed a protest around the parliament. They wouldn't let the legislatures out of the parliament buildings for a couple of days. They wouldn't let them out. I thought that was pretty good. But Ukraine, it's a little tenser because there's more at stake there. And I think that there's probably some kind of proxy war going on between the different factions. And it's really sad that the people that are suffering are the Ukrainians. They aren't the people that are funding either side of that fight. And it's just kind of sick. The people in Eastern Europe are a lot of them are just like people that you live next door to. A lot of Polish people, a lot of people from around the Black Sea area have immigrated to the United States in the last 150 years. And they look just like you, except for an accent, they could be you. And I was, in some parts of the United States, if you go into Chicago area, they still have Polish newspapers printed in Polish. So these are people that are part of America now. Our fellow Americans have relatives living over there that are possibly dying right now. It's just really sad to see this happening, and I just hope it doesn't come here. It certainly sounds almost like they're trying to set up that kind of a confrontation here with the disarming people and trying to demonize and set one group of people against another, and trying to set up these different factions and get us fighting amongst ourselves. And it's I don't think anything good is coming out of this. I'm just another reason to support this Jefferson Republic movement, because I think that's leaving this union now might be the safest way to survive in the future, because these guys are crazy. I think they're insane. So if you get a chance, look at that.
Hey, Chuck, we're getting a call. You want to open up the lines?
Yeah, I'm going to post this again, so in case you guys missed it. And let's go ahead and take the call. This is historic. First call of the year.
Oh. Hey, caller, we missed you. Call in again.
I'll stop talking so you can dial.
I just didn't want to patch somebody in while you were in the middle of a thought. So go ahead and call in again, caller. Lines are now open.
Okay.
All right. Well, we'll keep going. And,
anyway, that was just kind of a segue. Drew was bringing up the teacher strike here. We reported on this last week, and last week was kind of fun for me because I got it really bugs me when you're in a city. Medford's not really small. It's my wife calls it a village because she's from a city of about 1.5 million people, but it's still kind of small and quaint in a lot of areas. A lot of the people that are here that are involved in things, and at the same time, it has some. It's like it tries to be a big city in other ways, but a lot of the things that happen here are kind of funny to me because they're trying to imitate bigger cities. So like our Occupy movement here was really peaceful and nice, and different people getting there and talking about different points of view. And for the most part, it was really pretty good. It showed that people of different points of view can get together and agree on a lot of stuff. And the things that were different from us were smaller than the things that were uniting us. And so I think that was really positive. And we weren't like a lot of the other movements where they had violence, and we had people sitting around kind of kumbaya moments. And then there were some people that just didn't agree and they kind of stomped off. Maybe they were supposed to be there to make things tense and everything. But Drew was more involved than I was. I think he could probably echo what I'm saying.
I completely agree. I was on the steering committee for the event, for the first event, and so it was weird because here I am an anarcho-capitalist, among socialists and communists, and we're all getting together to have our event, and while the cops are there trying to tell us what to do. That's one thing that I was really getting sick of with the Occupy events and also just any other events that I participated in, where the cops always there to tell you what to do, or tell you what you can't do, or just to menace you. You know, in San Francisco, they were especially menacing. It was completely unacceptable. And to be standing there with a bunch of kids and hippies and whatnot, and a very, very peaceful gathering, and to have cops all lined up in riot gear getting ready to bust skulls. It was just absolutely ridiculous. And I think the people of San Francisco should be completely embarrassed that's how their mayor and their chief of police decided to handle that. It's absolutely disgusting. But I completely agree with you. You know, when you're standing there on a street corner with somebody who you think is your enemy, or somebody who you think is the problem, when you start talking, you realize that there's a lot of common ground, and you have a lot of common problems. One thing I noticed is that you know, people seem to be wrestling with the issue of capitalism and saying that capitalism is the problem. And you and I know that there are different flavors of capitalism.
Well, and I think it's really unfair to call it capitalism too, because we haven't had capitalism there for.
What we have is crapitalism.
Yeah, if you have a centrally controlled bank that's in control of your money, you can't possibly have capitalism. You have so much government regulation and control right there, and actually our Federal Reserve isn't even a governmental entity. It works under the government, creates a monopoly for them to exist within, which is that's kind of sick. So that the fact that your money supply is perverted to that extent, you couldn't possibly have a free market. So, but it gets blamed for all the problems when it's really being caused by that central bank. And a lot of the people there at the Medford Occupy came to realize that, and they understood what the problem was, really the central bank. They thought that by pulling money out of big national banks like the Chase banks and the Bank of America and those such, and putting in the local things like credit unions, they would be solving the problem. And it really wasn't solving the problem, because those are still part of the Federal Reserve System, and so it isn't. But they were at least had their heart in the right spot. They were kind of starting to wake up a little bit to the problem. So it wasn't a horrible thing. But how this all ties into the teacher strike, this is kind of interesting. Well, as I get to drive around town and my job, and 4 days a week in the morning, I'm out delivering alcohol to bars and restaurants. I occasionally drive by a school, and this week there are teachers out there with protest signs. And this to me, this is hilarious. These are handmade, hand-painted signs. They have inane, senseless slogans on them that don't mean anything, like support our teachers. You know, a mind is too great a thing to waste, and just stuff that means nothing. It's like, what does that even mean? And almost every one of them, there was a counter demonstrator across the street, and every one of these counter demonstrators had really nicely done. They had taken these peel-off letters that you can get at the Dollar Tree, and the little packets of those, and they'd made nice signs that were easy to read, and they had facts on them, like teachers earn this much money per year. The average in this Jackson County is this much. This is, who needs to support who here? Things like that. I mean, it just things that we were talking about on our show last week. And I thought, this is really amazing. There's other people out there that get it just like we get it. And the teachers are just, they don't get it. They just think we need more. We need more. We need more. And these are the teachers that are indoctrinating our children into things that telling them that these giant corporations they're horrible, they're greedy, and the only greed that I can see going on right now is these teachers. They on Monday, because it was a holiday and there wouldn't be any school anyway, it was President's Day. The teachers made these big, huge, long caravans, like you'd have after a wedding, and they had these cars. They just caravanned around town with their little watercolor painted windows and streamers coming out, and they're driving around honking their horns. Every single one of these cars was 2 years old or newer. They were all nice cars, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 cars. They're driving around town, and they're driving through parking lots that are full of cars that are 10 years old. And I'm telling you, they're just poking themselves in the eye with a sharp stick. They don't understand how out of touch they are. This is a really depressed economy in our community. And so it's laughable that they are this far out of touch with reality. They don't understand what's going on here. So did you happen to see any of those? Drew, you were actually in Ashland, so you missed the Medford teachers and their parade they had.
Yeah, I totally missed it. And I rarely actually make it into, Medford proper, in downtown Medford. I'm almost never there. I just, I exist, just a few blocks from where you are. And I always take North Phoenix Road into Phoenix and then do my work there and then on to Ashland. So I never go downtown. I never venture out around that area. Hey, we have another call coming in.
Oh, cool.
Hi, you are on Double Cross Radio. We are live.
Hi, it's Colby.
Colby, what's up?
My man, Colby.
I think it's kind of funny that it'd be honestly awesome to sit down and start a dialogue with these teachers and see how they'd feel about protesting about Common Core or the older school curriculum that we don't have now.
Well, I think that the teachers don't have too much say in the curriculum. That's kind of it's not even set by the school board anymore. It's set by the state, unfortunately. They can kind of subvert it if they choose to kind of ignore it, whatever, but they kind of get paid by how well they implement these programs. So they're kind of under the gun to do that. So I don't know if they could do too much. I think the people to talk to about curriculum would maybe be people further up the line, or maybe just to have talk to the parents who are sending their kids to these crappy schools and tell them you got to get your kids out of there. I think if they had a real drop in attendance and private schools were just busting at the seams and more people were homeschooling, you might get their attention better that way than to just talk with the teachers. I think the one thing the teachers don't understand is they're in that pipeline of information that travels down through the government about, we're having a recovery, things are getting better, and they think it's time for them to get more money too. And they don't understand that that's a lie.
Right, but to be honest, I mean, if they're going to strike about this, if they'd like to teach the children better things, would it not also be, a better idea for them to actually come out about something and say, hey, let's support what most of our children's parents would probably rather have versus what we're doing right now?
Well, that's a good point. If they were supporting things that the community was behind, the community would be behind them. That's excellent thinking, Colby. I don't think they figured that out.
Just a thought. I mean, it'd be interesting to start a dialogue with what they think about it.
Yeah, and I would just only add this. We offered free time on our show to anybody that wanted to come on and bring the teacher's point of view to our show. I'm kind of one-sided. I admit it. I'm not trying to be fair. I'm kind of biased. I think these guys are crazy. The only people that are doing well in our economy in Jackson County are the people that have government jobs. That's just plain and simple. That's it. Everybody else.
I think I talked to actually one person that supported this.
Now, the only people that are doing well are the people that are living large, are the people that work for the government. And Danny Jordan's the highest paid city manager in the state of Oregon. Yeah, he's got to be loving it. And school teachers you're government employees, whether you know it or not. You're working for your public employees. That's what it says. You're a public employee union. So you guys are living large compared to everybody else, and they see it. There's a lot of anger about you going on strike and wanting more, and there's a lot of people that just don't understand it. So it looks like we may have another person here with some comments.
Yes, sir. Have a nice day.
You stay here, Colby. I think we have someone else that's on a Skype.
Yes, we have Colorblind Justice on the line.
So hang on there, Colby.
Welcome back, Colorblind Justice.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. You are live on Double Cross Radio. Good to hear your voice.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm
You're
getting
loud.
some feedback.
You're you're loud and clear.
Yeah, you sound great.
Excellent. Hey, is Colby still on the line?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Colby, how you doing?
Pretty good, sir.
Yeah, I just want to chime in and suggest that we're losing on this whole Medford strike. Hey guys, I'm getting a delay in my ears. I'm not sure why.
Are you still playing your player?
Oh, that's it. Okay. Let me
Put that on pause.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Podcast is at the win.
Yep. Okay, it's gone. Thanks. Yeah, we're getting hit from both sides, and you know, I want to engage in this whole strike controversy. You know, I wanted to at first, but then when I took a step back, I recognized that, you know, this is public sector versus public sector. Okay? So these are the tax eaters, if you will, versus the private sector makers. And, you know, it's like, you know, do we want to get hit by a 2x4 or do we want to get hit by a crowbar? You know, which do we want? It's so ridiculous. So, I mean, and the media is playing it up all the way to the very end in hopes that people will take a side. You know, choose which team you think you want to win. You want to have win in this conflict. Okay, let me just back up one more step. And the teachers have made allegations of the school board giving themselves raises. So if the school board gave themselves raises, let's address that issue. Right, Chuck?
I think we should. I actually didn't understand the school board was a paid position, but apparently I didn't understand that. But if they are, they shouldn't be being paid very much. It's, and when I was going to school, it was an elected position and you served as a volunteer. It wasn't paid at all. So I just assumed it was still that way. Apparently I'm wrong in that assumption.
Right.
But
and I do too.
I think they may get a per diem or a travel allowances and, you know, things like this for attending different things. And they may have gotten an increase in their per diem or something.
Yeah. Well, here's the conspiracy. Okay. The public sector teachers are blaming the public sector school board. You know, they're both winning in this whole thing and they're using the kids as human shields.
Yes.
In this media war, you know, of the minds. And, you know, folks like Colby are getting, you know, in the Medford school district are getting stuck. And, you know, it really comes down to how much can the private sector take in this public sector versus public sector war as the media puts it out there for people to choose which side to take, which is completely ridiculous. But anyway, I just want to chime in on that.
Well, you know, I think we kind of touched on that a little bit last week when we talked about
you did.
If your tax base becomes so high that it just is difficult to live here, you're going to chase your tax base to other school districts.
Yeah.
And people will vote with their feet. I mean, and it doesn't have to be someone who's a lot of people that rent apartments, for instance, they may not know why their apartment rent is going up, or why do we have to pay this much for this appointment? There's a whole apartment building over there that's empty, it's vacant. It's got, you know, all the windows and doors are boarded up, you know, and how come we have to, you know, there's enough supply of this and we have to pay this high rent for the one we're in? Well, it's because property taxes have gone up to pay for these things, and the jobs will leave. The people will start moving to surrounding communities, or they'll. I tell you, if Republic of Jefferson ever comes into existence, a lot of people might move there because I'm sure they're going to have a much better tax, if any tax. I hope they have no tax, but I'm sure their tax situation will be much better than it'll be in Jackson County. And it'd be a lot easier to live there and send your kids to school there and drive over the mountain if you needed to go to work in the Medford area or in Jackson County. And probably wouldn't be too many jobs in the Medford area, but I think what they're going to find, you can tax yourself to death. It's you can't raise that level above the levels that people in other areas are paying, or you're going to drive people to those other areas, and you'll lose your tax base. You'll have less than you had before. So I don't think they understand that. They think that it's a zero-sum game or something, that they just want a bigger share of the pie. They don't realize that the pie gets smaller if they change the formula for it.
Yeah. Well, I had a question. Are you guys going to have a guest tonight before 9?
Well, we're possibly going to have a drop-in guest. I don't know, Drew, is he online yet?
Well, I'm expecting Gary Lake to pop in at some point, but I don't see him on yet. So,
okay.
I wanted to remind everybody, just in case Gary doesn't make it on, that we've got our big Jefferson Republic Liberty concert featuring Jordan Page on March 22nd at the Siskiyou County Fairgrounds in Wairika.
Yeah, and Anthony Antiso, who was on our show about a month ago, was on Daily Paul Radio today. He's on some woman's program. I forgot her name already. I'm horrible with names.
Well, that was Allison Bricker.
Allison Bricker, yes. And he actually, every time I hear him, he gets better and better at this. He gave a better presentation than he gave on our program. He's had a month to practice this a couple times at least, and he was really smooth, and it made so much sense. If you get a chance to listen to that podcast, he was on fire. But he's really concerned, and they need to sell more tickets, and he wants people, even if you're out. So if you're outside of this region, Southern Oregon, Northern California, if you're outside of this region, but you still want to support this liberty movement, you could buy a ticket and just not use it. You could be your souvenir. This is history being made. And this could be something you could put in a scrapbook and say, I helped participate in the forming of, the Hong Kong of the Western Hemisphere and the Jefferson Republic. And it was a pretty good show. She said she's going to have a podcast up soon. So I'd urge everybody to listen to that when it comes up. We'll try and grab it when it comes up and post it on our Facebook page so you have a link to it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I just wanted to say thanks for covering the topic of the Med for Teacher strike. And Colby, I didn't mean to take up your area. I wanted to call and reinforce what you were saying because there are a lot of factors that are going on behind the scenes, and the media is just amplifying the ridiculousness of the strike. I mean, the whole premise is which side deserves more of our taxes. And if we can separate the public sector from the private sector, I think we'd have a clearer perspective on what's really going on. So I'll back out and toss it back to Colby. Thanks.
Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin, I think you're actually, if you guys think back, we just had the same exact issue, 2 years ago in Eagle Point, which is the district I'm in, which is District 9. The same exact thing happened out here. They striked because the teachers were agitated because of the fact that the administrators gave themselves a pay raise and didn't give the teachers a pay raise. The same exact thing. We've seen it twice now already in the same exact area.
Well, I think that may be indicative of anybody who gets control of a situation like that. They always think they deserve more. They work so hard. They put in so many hours that are quote unquote unpaid hours, and they deserve more for all that. They had so much time away from their family, and I just remember that wonderful cartoon Wonder Chicken or Super Chicken, and it's this, he'd always talk to his assistant, and he'd always say, "You knew the job was dangerous when you took it, Fred." And I think that's kind of comes with the job. You want the job or not?
No, and I completely agree with that.
So I can understand when the teacher knows that a joint, but I think that you don't fix the problem by making another wrong. Two wrongs don't make it right. So you fix the problem by getting new administrators, firing those guys, and get some people in there to work for what the job pays. So if I remember correctly, the other issue they had at the Eagle Point was the administrator that was in when I left the Army in 2001 was
Mr. Remick. He retired from the position, but was still receiving $2,000 a month for pay, and he was at a part-time position and was no longer the administrator.
Yeah, he was
So
consulting.
they striked.
He was
Yeah,
like
he was consulting.
you can work up to
while
like
receiving
6 months or
retirement.
something of that condition or something like that. Yeah, something crazy.
Yeah.
And because the school year goes, it's 6 months every fiscal year, every calendar year, because the school year goes 6 months in 2013 and 6 months in 2014, you could actually go through a full school year that way and basically get paid and plus get your PERS retirement money. And yeah, it's a real scam. Double dip.
And I don't agree with the strike at all, but I think that if we could get the teachers to back other things like, hey, striking against horrible curriculums. I mean, I'm dealing with Head Start, thank God, alone. But even that is, I mean, they want to violate my Fourth Amendment right 3 times a year.
Colby, that just gave me a great idea. We need to organize a strike against Head Start. We have people on there with we can picket line them.
There's many things we could do like this. It'd be nice to have the teachers behind it, though.
It would be. I think if you find and you talk to a lot of these teachers, you'll find that they are kind of they've grown up in this system. They're team players. They pretty much watch each other's back, and they don't really understand free market principles very well at all. My ex-wife was a teacher, and she'd always just say she would say, okay, these people are coming over, they're teachers, she said, they're my friends, just don't talk about this, because you'll just make it hard for me. And that's kind of how it was.
So the normal understanding is that the union has control over what they can strike over?
They have control over what they think. So they don't have to control what they strike over, because they've kind of brainwashed them into this, mono teacher think, and that's what they think all the time. They all think they march in lockstep. They march in lockstep. There's very few people that are really what you'd call rebels, that escape that. In my experience, I've maybe talked to 1 or 2 teachers out of hundreds. So anyway,
that's a horrendous event, though.
Thanks for your call. We have our other guest, Gary Lake, has called in, or he's online. He's ready to go. So thank you so much for your call. Call in again. It was awesome points you brought up. Good history about the Eagle Point schools also. Excellent.
Have a good night, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Colby. Okay, we are going to patch in Gary Lake here. I think he's ready, and so I'm going to add him to the call.
Anyway,
thanks for calling. Okay, Gary's going to have to turn off his player.
Gary, we're getting a little feedback from you.
That always happens to everybody. It even happens to me.
There we go. This sounds good.
Yeah. Okay.
Gary, can you hear us?
Yeah, I think you can hear us.
Okay. Sorry about that, guy. Sorry, I just rolled in. I apologize.
Oh, no problem.
You're fine.
Yeah.
So, to our listeners, this is Gary Lake. Gary Lake is a spokesperson for the Jefferson Action Committee. And Gary, welcome back to the show. You've been with us before and joined Mr. Anthony Antiso a few weeks ago to talk about the Jefferson Republic.
Yeah, well, thank you. Appreciate it. Just to want to clarify, I'm not a spokesperson for the Jefferson Action Committee, but I do help Tony, Anthony Antiso, the spokesperson, and the committee with what limited communication skills that I have.
Okay. Well, I think your communication skills are quite excellent. So what did you want to get into tonight?
Well, first of all, thanks for bringing up that show earlier today. I was jumped in late on that one too. I'm a bad boy. Tony really rocked it, didn't he? He was, he did. Yeah. That was fun to listen to. And he was eluding. I know he probably would have said your guys' name, but he was probably thinking, would Gary let me do that?
He has permission to use my name whenever he sees it.
Well, he was talking about Jordan Page, and then Allison was talking about Jordan Page, and they were excited, and what a great guy he is. And so Tony kind of told the story how we got hooked up with him, and he was like, yeah, Gary's friends and stuff like that. And I was laughing, even though you couldn't hear me, but yeah. So anyhow, but yeah, good show, and things are really getting exciting. Did you guys watch the news last night? Fox?
No, I don't have TV. So
oh, that's right. Yeah.
Neither do I.
I should try to watch on YouTube.
Yeah. Anyhow, there was a story about a good story about the Jefferson Republic on Fox, and at 10 o'clock, and they're doing the second part of it today, and pretty meaty stuff. It was really exciting to watch. Fun. But anyhow, yeah, I don't ever get to watch stuff unless it has something to do with something I'm involved with.
As long as they don't say that we're trying to create a territory.
Yeah, no kidding.
We're not trying to create a territory, people. No, and
I noticed that Allison kind of snuck that one in.
Yeah,
I thought Allison did a pretty good job, clarifying what this means.
Yeah, and what? Maybe
it's not a state, it's not territory.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes with so many people. I mean, it's like I know that not speaking on my behalf, but just kind of what I know of the Jefferson Action Committee and their views, having the honor to spend some time with them. Basically, they support. I mean, that's something they totally support. They just see that they can make to a sense, as far as the initial. More control over local government, natural resource uses, freedom to do good business in an entrepreneurial way and stuff. Those are, like-minded ideas. But, the state of Jefferson has a history, and it's very romantic. And, there's a lot of people that, it's like, I wouldn't quit being a Packers fan just because of better, because I went to work for another team.
Yeah. And I just I appreciated that she just laid it out. This would create, a sovereign country. It wouldn't be creating a state.
Yeah, it's definitely a republic. It's absolutely, it's a republic and a true form of republic. And, yeah, it was pretty good show. Your guys' show was really good. Was it a week or two ago? When was that? That was a while ago.
About a month ago.
Oh, has that been that long? Wow.
Twice.
Jeez. But,
we talked about 3 solid weeks, 3 Thursdays in a row. And there's more material there. It's amazing. It's an amazing, concept. And just the more I think about it, I'm really excited with the economic, potential of actually being free, getting out from underneath the Federal Reserve System, and having free banking, having free trade, and the economic viability that would, come to an independent republic like that. It would be incredible. It would be I tell you, it would light up the economy of the Northern California economies and the Southern Oregon economies, just by being there, by everything that it would radiate out of it. It would leak out of the Jefferson Republic. It would make all those counties that surround it more viable just because of its presence.
Oh, you bet. Absolutely.
It would be an economic engine for the whole West Coast.
Well, we'll gotta repair the Jefferson Republic boundaries first, and then move out. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be big. It's already much bigger than Hong Kong is, and look what Hong Kong does for the Pacific Rim.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think though that Jefferson would be much more focused on agriculture.
Right.
I think it would be, but it's you can't downplay the potential that's there for people that want it. Well, I'll use Cody Wilson as an example. And I don't know if he's interested in moving there or not. I don't even know the guy. I don't know him, but I'll just say someone like him. That he's the guy that invented the 3D printing for the gun, developed the software for that to make the plastic guns.
Sure.
3D printing. And guy is really just he's like a genius. He was one of those special students in Texas that they select to go to University of Texas for free, and they put him in this advanced program to all the scientific research and computers and whatever, and the guy was like at the top of that class, and he's continuing just to be brilliant in what he knows and what he creates and problems that he can solve. And, these aren't problems that other people have solved before that he's just duplicated. These are new problems that he figures out ways around them. And people like that are going to enjoy being in a place where when they can do something that nobody else can do, they can be fairly compensated for. They don't have to give a percentage of it to a government lackey that doesn't know jack. So they're going to be attracted to a place like that. So you may have more industry and commerce than you think, but doesn't mean you won't have agriculture and mining and timber.
Yeah, well, of course, that's, I know that it'll definitely draw technology. It'll be a wonderful thing. You guys are so cerebral and so you're above me when it comes to economics and stuff like that. So I just kind of focus on, March 22nd, June 3rd, it's like.
Hey, that's what you have the more effective strategy. I think that's, we can think about it all we want, but really, you got to have some action in those dates.
Being an entrepreneur, I want to get out of this mess that I'm in. And I know that other entrepreneurs feel the same way. And so I would love to set up operations in the Jefferson Republic. And I know other entrepreneurs who would too. And
I'd love to be your neighbor, Drew.
That would be fantastic. And most of the entrepreneurs that I am, dealing with that would really be interested in going to Jefferson Republic are heavily immersed in agriculture, primarily aquaponics and hydroponics. And there's a lot of innovation going on in the Ashland area right now. And I know that we'd bail out of here in a heartbeat.
Well, that's a real good point, Drew. Your industry and your expertise in your niche field, but you're able to basically utilize the talents of what used to be your competitors as your allies in supplying a more robust service with a much higher quality, and that's kind of what it's all about, is using some of the real the true and tried ways, and then infusing, of course, the environmentally very proven processes that are good. It's a win-win situation, and then the technology. I mean, that comes into the area. It's just, but agriculture is really important in Siskiyou County. And for Siskiyou County, it's a great model for that kind of socioeconomic or that social dynamic. But see, and then it's really cool. It's like Jackson County would be, let's say in the future, Jackson County has its own unique imprint, in the United States. And, it's kind of like a real strong woven, peace blanket, if you will. And Siskiyou County would be agricultural, I think, significant and yet technically advanced, without, I don't know, it's kind of weird for me to think about, high rises and stuff like that, but not that you're implying that, but, it's like, we're just like, this county is where it's at and it needs to change for the reason it's changing for. And the model, basically the strategy and the game plan is something that everybody can utilize to their benefit. And, so anyhow, who knows what the technology or who knows what kind of economic boom or whatever will happen, but, I know that it'll be a way better thing. And the hydroponics and man, what a great place to, be in Siskiyou County, where you have access to, all the arterial, for, shipping or whatever, airport. It's just a great spot, and it's
another thing too is just with the focus on production while using a minimum amount of resources.
Exactly,
I think is a perfect fit. Where we know how valuable water is, and it's becoming more and more scarce, and and I'm trying to focus on this form of agriculture that recycles its water. Just keeps reusing it. Of course, we have to top up for evaporation, spillage sometimes, but for the most part, we're reusing that water instead of irrigating and then irrigating again and irrigating again. And now, it's a matter of just being even more efficient with the feed resources and with power resources. And like currently I'm trying to I don't want to get off track, but I'm trying to work on very low energy systems to move the water around, to filter the water. And so I'm working on systems where I'll be able to use DC instead of AC, and that opens me up to being able to use solar or biofuels and things like that. But I could see it's happening around me. I'm getting calls from people weekly that have an area of expertise that's related to what I'm doing, that wants to help and be a part of this and collaborate. And so I see this critical mass forming. And so we're kind of, I could see, some major innovation taking place. And so, who knows what the Jefferson Republic could end up looking like? It could end up being like the Silicon Valley of agriculture, but it'd be kind of cool when you go up and you expect to have all these, buildings and all this glass and shiny metal and stuff, and everything is covered in product that's it's like you green everything that's being harvested and growing things,
and it's like, okay, now where is this place? And they'll get to Oregon and say, oh yeah, you got to turn around, it happens all the time, and you go driving back in and go, oh wow, everything's cool, man. It's like really environmentally cool.
Yeah, well, it's just can we produce high quality food and preserve the resources at the same time. And that's what I'm proving, that you can do such a thing. But other guys that I'm working with are really, developing, some cutting edge systems, and, hopefully we'll be rolling some things out in my shop soon. But, we need to be in a different place. I just, all the time, the government's in my face, and I know that I could do so much more if I was operating in a place where I wasn't so regulated, and
right.
And that burden is just always there, always distracting me, keeping me focused on things that don't have anything to do with production or research and development, innovation, that sort of thing. It's just the government's always there wanting a form from you, wanting a fee from you. It's just telling you what to do, how to do something, making you get a license, making you get a permit, making you get an inspection, and so on and so forth. And this is why the USSA is in the situation that it's in. It's killed the goose that laid the golden eggs.
Right.
And that's it. And you have entrepreneurs who really are not incentivized to take a risk. And then if they do, and I've said this before, you end up in the same position. It doesn't matter what field you go into. If you're a jeweler, or if you're a farmer, or if you're a property manager, or whatever, you end up pushing paper. You just end up being that guy filling out forms, getting the payroll tax forms sent in on time, and all that stuff. And it doesn't matter what trade that you're in, you end up doing that same job. You just end up not being an innovator, not being an entrepreneur, but just shoveling paper around. And one of the things, and kind of bringing it back into more of my personal critical path schedule and the obligations that I have, or I should say the opportunities that I have. Basically, what Siskiyou County, the beautiful thing about it is we're going to be going to vote, or the county voters are going to, be voting. And this is a group of people that knows the lay of the land. This is a group of people that even when they're fighting, and bickering or whatever, it's a family for the most part. And even though there's a South County and a North County, and then you got your Scott Valley and you got your Shasta Valley. I mean, the bottom line is this is a group of people where roots run deep and go back a long ways. And we're talking like,
post, right, the first settlers here and ranchers and farmers. And if this could, if there's a genuine republic that can withstand the onslaught of barrages that is going to be thrown in their direction, I think Siskiyou County is a great place to start. The cohesiveness. And so, it's even though a lot of people are looking at it and, Anthony's, this somebody from the Ukraine could be listening to this, but, right now, but, it's going to be interesting because March 2nd, 22nd, the concert, that's kind of when everybody starts realizing, whoa, this really is real. That's going to be the glue. It's like, wow, this thing really is happening. Like Jordan Page is here and everybody's celebrating and there's no, controversy. It's just like, let's get together. And then it goes out into the public and they start really identifying what's on the ballot. And I know that there's some issues with, as it's been in the news with regards to the interpretation and emphasis in, parentheses, interpretation of what people are really voting on. And that's the first little trick that's going to be played. Mm-hmm. That's a big one too. So, Siskiyou County, if they can get together and do this, and this vote becomes a yes, then we can first of all, the infrastructure goes in and all that. Then it gets wild, but then other people can look at it and go, okay, this is taking the next step and it's a step that is basically etched in law and, they can't take it back. And so the people then have an opportunity to utilize their efforts, their experiences, their skills, the incredible knowledge they have of the area or where they've moved from and see what they can do with this little territory, region, area, land base, whatever label anybody wants to put on it, it's still going to be the boundaries of Siskiyou County and the Jefferson Republic. And see what we can do with it and work together. So that's pretty exciting. Then we can, spring out from that. But, for all of you guys that are following along, I love to listen to what may be and it excites the heck out of me. And I'm horrible at economics and most everything else, but I do know this in short term, we have an opportunity to educate and help in any way we can to get that vote, a yes vote, June 3rd, and then get out from behind all this. It's a myth. It's, whatever, and into the point where, oh, okay, now we go to work. So anyhow, I think I've kind of gone off tangent here, but,
well, not really at all. Staying right on topic. So, can, people get onto the website jeffersonrepublic.org and purchase tickets yet?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hey, thanks. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. One of the most important things I wanted to walk away from tonight was those of you that have bought tickets, and I'm sure that it would have been people through your guys' show last week because, just wanted the tickets they're cut and they're ready to start getting mailed out. So my apologies. I thought we'd have them a little bit sooner and in your hand by now, but they are now officially, being packaged out and sent out. So yeah. And if you can't make it, that $20, frame that thing, man, frame that ticket, put it over your desk, but you contributed, because it all goes to educating.
This is really, really important point in the history of this country, and the history of our heritage, really. And Anthony did a great job talking about this today, but the people listening to our program weren't there to hear him. So I'm going to try and make a Reader's Digest version of what he said, and I hope I do him justice. There's a reason why all this is taking place. They didn't just try and become a 51st state, and that is that in doing the research for developing this movement, they came across some legal documents which showed that the United States ceased to be what we're taught in school in 1871 when they passed a new constitution for the District of Columbia, and the government now is ruled under that constitution. It is different than the one that this country started with, and probably the most telling change in it is just the title of the document. The original one was the original Constitution was labeled the Constitution for the United States of America. Now, when you listen to that title, it indicates that there were sovereign states that were united for a common cause in America. It wasn't a single union with these divisions called states. It was the states were the sovereigns. Well, the name changed to the Constitution of the United States of America, and that's a singular, not a plural usage. So that it changed. That's a difference. And there's other things that changed. Prior to this incorporation, freedom to travel was just a given. I mean, people traveled all over the world, and it wasn't just Americans. It was people all over the world traveled freely. But as these corporations were put into place in all these different countries, suddenly you needed permission to travel, called a passport. Well, before the 20th century, nobody used passports. No one had to have a passport. You wanted to go somewhere, you got on a boat or a train and you went there. Now you can't leave without permission. There's a lot of things that have changed, and we haven't been told about it. And you say, well, I'm going to go and ask my congressman about this and see if this is really true what you're saying. Well, you can go ahead and do that. I doubt that he's going to tell you. I just posted a link in our chat for those of you who want to look up this paper. This is from a Serendipity website, and this person's name is last name is Giuliani. I don't know if she's any relation to the Lisa Giuliani. I don't know if she's any relation to the former mayor of New York, but she did an awesome job researching this. And this movement, this Republic of Jefferson movement, this is Jefferson's, this is Thomas Jefferson's dream of free people. That the United States wouldn't have just been a country, but it would have been spawning other free republics in North America, in the area, the boundaries that we have, and around the rest of the world. And these free republics would then be the salvation of mankind. They would bring freedom to all men. And this is a huge step in that direction. I just think it's the most important thing that's going to happen in my lifetime. And I hope that all of you, whether you can come or not, can support it by buying a ticket. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to buy 6 tickets. So,
oh man, it's turning into a contest now.
It's not a contest, dude. I have 4 children living here.
Well,
I have 2 children and their spouses, and then my wife and I. So that's 6. So
real quick, my dad walked by as he was walking by my desk earlier today, and he kind of got a sheepish look on his face, and he reaches down. And I said, "Hey, those are Drew's tickets." and he's so he was. I think that was directly related to you, Drew.
Yeah, he's purchased 10 tickets, I think, right? I bought 5, and he bought 5. I'd matched his 5, but then he bought another 5.
Yeah, and it's interesting is people don't realize it, but every ticket, I mean, like 2 tickets, I don't look at them as like their face value as far as much as I look at it. Okay, that's X amount of stamps, or that is X amount of envelopes, and so when somebody buys a ticket or 2 tickets. It's like, cool, I can do this today, and get this accomplished. Yep. And, basically, because it's not inexpensive, putting on something like that. But I'd pay for it out of my pocket if I could. But anyhow, it's important. Every single one of those tickets. I mean, I think it was, your purchase, Drew, that I think paid for the tickets to be printed. So anyhow, keep it up. Yeah. If you guys, even if you're not going to show up, you might, just that $20, whatever. It's all about spreading the word and getting this thing so that people can educate themselves to accurately and confidently make their own decision and not regret it, whether they, you know what I'm saying? It's all about educating the people and the June 3rd vote. So, but yeah, sorry to chime in, but yeah, there's a little competition going on. I want to see a winner. we only have X amount of tickets, man. I want to see the finish line.
Yeah, we've got some overhead to cover. We got to pay for this gig. It's not cheap. So, and we got to accomplish our mission with it.
Yeah, and it's as I said before, this is in my lifetime. I'm not going to do anything more important than be involved in this movement.
I would agree.
Just not going to happen.
Yeah, it's a pretty exciting time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is.
Hey guys, listen, I got to get going, but I've got some volunteers that are helping out, and I've got a consultant that's working for free. Woohoo!
Hey, right on.
And I gotta feed them at least.
sounds like there's some other people that understand how important this is.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, you know what? I am truly fortunate to be a part of it, and I'm just like, I'm just like a cheerleader. I really, it's just communication and camaraderie, and it's like just being brothers and sisters of a community, and then reaching out. That's what's going to have to happen, for this country to heal. Is small groups of very, very good people are going to have to hold hands and just weather some of the bad things that have happened for a long time. But there's a lot of heart in a lot of people, and sometimes it just takes another person to bring it out in them. And so I've got some excellent volunteers that are helping me out. You guys have been fantastic. I mean, this whole Jordan Page thing is off the hook, and you guys just kind of smile at the end and go, yeah, you know what? We hooked that up. So anyhow.
This is a win-win-win. We get to hear him in concert, and we get to support Jordan and his efforts, which is awesome for us. And then, we get to support the Jefferson Republic movement at the same time. So we can't see that there's anything bad happening out of this at all.
Well, we appreciate the support, and it's going to jump back over that invisible imaginary border, that little line that I never see, but I guess there's a sign that says it's there, which is California, Oregon.
Just past Seattle Bar there at Applegate Lake, where the road ends and it becomes gravel, and there's this little hand painted sign that says California border or whatever. It just really is the border there. And I go by that, and the first time I passed that, I said, I wonder how they tell where the border is once you get off the road.
Yeah, no kidding.
Just remember out there in the woods.
It's always perpendicular. Just remember that, okay? It's always a perpendicular road. The line that you can never see, you can just, anything you're doing, you can just, hey, take it from me. Blame it on me. No, I'm just kidding. It's 90 degrees right and left. That's your line.
When you can't see the road, just guess.
Exactly. Yeah. But anyhow, well, listen, guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Go to, Jefferson Republic website, .org. There's a Jordan Page link right in the upper hand, right corner. And, look forward to it, man. I get to throw on a real cool party, and, that's going to be a blast, and you guys are knee deep in it too. So get ready.
Well, hopefully I'll have some good news tomorrow, on, some, AV info.
Cool.
And, we'll get things rolling.
Excellent. All right, guys. Take care. Thank you very much.
Gary.
Good night.
Okay.
Chuck, I've got Colorblind Justice back on the line here. He wants to get into some, environomics.
Okay.
Hey guys, thanks for letting me back on. I see Zach's on too. I want to give him an opportunity. Is Zach on?
Zach monitors in case we're making
no, Zach's gone.
Bad background noise. Yeah, he tells us stop, mute your mic when you're going to type. Stuff like that.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm coming through all right?
You're coming through loud and clear.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity. I want to talk a little bit about environomics. And Chuck, you'll remember that I did this presentation up at Butte Falls.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, since that time, it was about 9 months ago, and since that time, I'm looking around at the economy, and America is chock full of smart people, and I can't understand for the life of me why we Americans cannot figure this thing out. It's so frustrating. We see the trend. It hasn't even plateaued down and down before it reverses back up. So we just continue to keep going down and down. And I don't know how to get the message across to the politicians, because they don't seem to want to hear common sense, reason, logic, and simple mathematics. Have you noticed that?
You said mathematics?
Yeah, I said mathematics. That's the key word there. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that really are challenged by simple addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. I mean, they know how to do it. If you write the problem down, they can solve it, but actually applying it to a real life situation, they have trouble putting it in action.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree. And I mean, it's to the point of being so ridiculous for the politicians to not hear reason, common sense, and simple mathematics. The environomics aspect that Drew introduced as a topic is a combination, it's a hybrid, if you will, of environmentalism and economics. And environmentalism is great. We all need clean air, pure water, and we also need to exist, on the economic side. So the way I step into this conversation is usually when somebody talks about quote unquote sustainability. And we've been pretty much conditioned to assume that people mean by sustainability environmental sustainability, purposely excluding economic sustainability. And that's when I challenge them. Why not talk about economic sustainability in the same sentence, if not the same paragraph? Because isn't that what sustainability is really all about? Why exclude economics? And so when somebody talks about strictly an economic argument at the expense of the environment, I challenge that person, that party with an environmental approach to the same presentation, so that there is a balance between environment and economics. So my observation.
Well,
go ahead, Chuck.
I'm going to make an interjection here just to give you or to put some historical perspective in this. When the Iron Curtain collapsed, the Eastern European countries were kind of thrown into whatever. The West rushed in, and they were going through kind of surveying things, seeing how they could help and whatever. And they realized that there was, their environment had been, they had been just raped. That's one of the words to say it. They had, it was only when they could start to interject free market principles back into their economies, and they still are not anything close to what I call free markets there, but they're much more so than they were. It was only when they did that they started to have improved breathing air. I went over there and visited. This is my first trip there was in 2005. That was 15 years after the collapse. And at that time still they had lots of problems in the big cities. You'd walk down the street and there'd be these nets alongside the buildings. So what are those nets there for? And she's now my wife. At the time that she was my host, she'd say, well, that was for the stuff that falls off the building. That way it won't hit the people. And I said, the stuff that falls, and then I realized the stucco and the bricks, the plaster, whatever, it would fall off the buildings. The air was so bad, it was destroying the concrete and making it kind of fall apart, and it would just fall off. They needed to go and do a lot of repairs and whatever. The buildings were all clean at the top. They were between 4 and 6 stories high, most of them, in the big cities. And these are huge cities, like 1.5 million, 2 million people in them, and they don't have, except for the buildings that have been built since the fall of communism there. They don't have any buildings that were built during the time of communism that exceed 6 stories in height. They just don't. Most of them are actually 3 to 5 stories. And the bottom 2 stories are all just black from the soot from the cars and the buses and stuff. And then the top floors, the walls are fairly clean because the smoke didn't get up that high. The people down the street just choking on this smoke. The life expectancy in these countries was around 50 years for men and women in the cities. It was horrible. And now people are living much longer lives there because just by Getting rid of this centrally planned economy that was run by the government, that was doing everything for the people. Suddenly they all have, better lives. Now it's not, wine and roses time and holiday every other day. They still have to work real hard, and they have a lot of infrastructure to replace and whatever, but their environment is much better and their economy is much better. You can have both. When you sacrifice one for the other, you probably end up with neither. It's kind of like liberty and safety, I guess, or freedom and safety. You have to have freedom to have safety. You can't give up one for the other. You won't have either. And same thing with the environment and the economy. If you don't have a good economy, you can't have a good environment. You'll have to always sacrifice your environment just to survive. Absolutely.
And, especially with the KBRA and the Klamath River controversy, I've been on the outside looking in on that situation, and, there's some suspicion as to whether these non-indigenous species were not purposely brought into the environment to create a crisis. Okay. And that would ensue, that would result in the economy essentially being forsaken to benefit the perceived crisis of the environment. Well, there have been so many over-regulations under the guise of, we'll call it what it is, neo-environmentalism. These are people who pretend to be environmentalists, but they're actually destroying the environment. And a perfect example is the wildfires. And I remind, my good friends on the left, if you will, and South County, those environmentalists who, they have goodness in their hearts. But again, I bring them back to common sense. If you really believe in the environment, you will support the responsible stewardship of the environment by going in and harvesting the timber and controlling the undergrowth. The fuel load in the woods are, it's beyond catastrophic levels. I don't know if you've heard this, but the organic growth rate of the ONC County Timber Forest, 1.2 billion board feet. In other words, if you can't hear it, that's the growth rate of these trees that are expanding and multiplying, and they're competing for sunlight, and is just incredible to the point where the trees are so large and they're so close together that when dry lightning strikes, the fire travels from treetop to treetop, and that's called a canopy fire.
And it goes faster than you can run.
Absolutely. It goes pretty much as fast as the wind. And, of course, the fires create wind, and you get this, this positive feedback loop, and it accelerates on itself. So
yeah, I just got to interject again. I don't want to get you off topic because you're saying a lot of great stuff here. But I'll also point out to people that there's a lot of private forests in this region too, and the private forests are largely not impacted by these fires because they manage their property much better than the government does, because they actually see it as a resource and a value and see it for what it really is. It's a home for animals. It's a full wealth that they can, the trees are cut down, they be replanted and they grow back again. And so, the private foresters do much, much, much better with their land than the commons of the federal lands, which are just not cared for very well at all.
Well, true that, and actually there have been pictures that show, within the same frame, within the same picture, two pieces of land. One is the government managed lands, and then the privately managed lands side by side. And the distinction, the difference between the two is stark. Okay, and I purposely use publicly managed lands because they're not government owned. even though they want us to believe that they own federal lands. No, they're the trustee, and they're empowered by the people to take care of our lands, the people's lands. And Utah is the tip of the spear in terms of driving that point home, and they're completely justified in doing so. And it's kind of a subtle nuance in the language that a lot of people just kind of, accept that, federal lands are federally owned. Absolutely not. They're federally managed. So anyway, there's documentation out there to support that correct argument.
Yeah. Loma and Ray, who were on our show before, they had a brilliant presentation on that, explaining how that works.
Absolutely. In my mind, they're the subject matter experts, if you will. They collect that information, and they have just a powerful presentation to the point where the mainstream media, when they interview them once, they really don't want them back because they make way too much sense, Yeah,
and it's, you look at, local stations aren't really mainstream, but these people, they know it's a great story, but they know if they put it out there and the people up the line see it, it's at the end of their career. They're never going to get out of Medford.
Yeah, that's right.
And so they just squash it, and they edit out all the stuff that they're worried about, so they can just put a fluff piece out there, and anyway, that's how it works. And it's, I don't know. I don't know how else to put it. You can't rely on the traditional news media and papers, radio, and TV that have been around for a long time, because they're owned and controlled by people that are working against you. Absolutely,
Chuck, and couldn't agree more. And so we need to keep an eye on that hand, if you will, as I saw this editorial cartoon, and I'm going to get back to Environomics real quick, but I got to share this. It's a cartoon of Ron Paul and his TV camera had this pipe coming out of the camera that looked like a periscope. I mean, the pipe went in front of Ron Paul. It went at 90 degrees up, over Ron Paul's head, down behind Ron Paul's head, and then continuing out. So the camera, even though it's aimed at Ron Paul, it couldn't see Ron Paul. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
that's how it is. I think Jon Stewart said it best. He said, "When did Ron Paul become the 13th floor of a hotel?"
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. So the main point that I wanted to get at is this whole idea of existence and the cost of living. Okay, for us to exist, we must consume in order to sustain life, and so we earn the fiat currency, and we take this fiat currency to a retail store, and we exchange the fiat currency for goods, or we might pay a service provider for services. But the point is, everything seems to go through the monetary system, most of which is occupied by the fiat currency. So as we consume, let's think about, the conversion of this consumption. And I hate to get too graphic, but there are 4 carbon-based outputs of our consumption. If we look at the gas that we pay for, we put in our vehicles, the carbon goes out of our tailpipe. If we look at the food that we go to the grocery store and we consume, the carbon goes down the toilet. And also we throw trash away, which ends up in the landfill. So that's 3 carbon outputs so far. But, there might be some refuse that we want to put into the fireplace, and so the carbon goes up the chimney to stay warm. So as we consume, we're converting, the fiat currency into carbon-based outputs. So meanwhile, we're witnessing the currency in circulation. This is our economy imploding. The economy is currency in circulation, and so we are converting our currency into carbon without the introduction of natural resource-based wealth. What's happened to America's wealth? Well, if we think about it, this sphere, if you will, this big bubble of currency in circulation is imploding on itself without any infusion to replace the carbon output of our wealth to exist. And once again, it gets back to the overregulation of the natural resources. Everything above the soil, if you do a 360 and look around, everything above the soil originally came from below the soil. And I try to remind the politicians of this fact. It's a very simple, 100% accurate premise of economics. Everything starts from below the soil, and as it is either harvested or if it grows, it is responsibly managed by human stewards of our environment for the purpose of wealth. We're converting the natural resource extraction, harvesting, management, if you will, for human wealth, so that we can be empowered to do a better job in managing natural resources. Otherwise, I mean, we're pretty much, short of the means to defend freedom. And that's one thing I learned from Michael Badnarik. If I could just, jump over real quick, there's going to be a big event in Wairika this Saturday. Michael Badnarik's going to come out and speak.
Wow.
9 to noon, and then from 2 to 5. That entire 6-hour, presentation, will cost people a $10 donation at the Wairika Community Center. After which, Sheriff John Lopi is going to speak from 6 p.m. until about, maybe 8 or so. And it should be an interesting day. But go ahead, guys, jump in. I'm sure I've raised some questions or thoughts.
So, is there going to cost to attend this?
$10 donation for the 9 to 5, and then there'll be an hour break before the 6 p.m. town hall with Sheriff Lopi. And there should be no cost for that.
Okay. And is there a place where people could maybe make contact so they could carpool people down there? I know it's not a huge drive, but
we'll hook up with friends and basically
good chance to get together with people of like minds.
Absolutely, you bet. And all this energy of state of Jefferson Republic. I'm seeing a lot of dynamics between the two camps, and I have my preference, but I just want freedom, and I believe that the better of the two will work itself out, and I believe in humans' ability to discern,
Well, I really believe in the majority of the people in Siskiyou County are very independent a lot, and they are an independent lot. They are less apt to be controlled by media. Doesn't mean they can't be, but they tend to be they tend to be more one with the land than one with the media, and so they I don't know which one's going to fly either. We have our preference here at the store. At the show, we've made it very well known. We're a Republic supporter here. We think the statehood issue is going to be slightly better than the one they have now, but it doesn't get rid of all the problems that emanate out of Washington D.C. and that's a much bigger problem, a much bigger weight on people's back, much bigger yoke or a bigger wagon that they're hitched to that they have to pull than the one that comes out of California. The one out of California might have be a little more irritating at times, as some of the screwy stuff that gets passed by all the legislatures that are elected out of Los Angeles and San Francisco. But I know that's a frustration for those people, and they think if they just have a smaller state, they could have more control. But I'm telling you, you're still going to be looking down the barrel of the guns that are coming out of Washington D.C. And I think that's the dissolution. It really is going to be the important one, and you don't have to ask permission for this one. You just do it.
Yeah, totally agree, Chuck. And With regards to Michael Badnarik, where I was going with that is, one thing that I learned from him real quick is, it's still ringing in my ears, is when he said that without property, you don't have standing, and therefore you cannot defend your rights. So, and property is just not what we think it is. It includes the means to obtain property. That's as good as property. When you don't have, fiat currency or money.
Your labor is actually property.
Sure.
Yes.
So the point is the value of your wealth is the means to defend freedom by way of having property. And those, in the olden days, if you didn't have property, you would not have standing in a court of law. I mean, it's that important to emphasize that point, because let's take condominiums. Okay, you're up on the second floor and you don't own the earth underneath your structure. Well, do you really own? You purchased a condominium, but do you own where you live? If you don't own the property beneath it, you really don't. So you don't have something to stand on. Therefore, you don't have standing to defend your rights in a court of law, technically. But anyway, Michael Badnarik, he's considered the constitutional scholar, and I've heard him speak about 9 months ago. He had a presentation in Gold Hill. Excellent. He lives in Texas, so we're honored to have him here.
Yeah. Now, what we're going to do is you hang on after we're going to sign off here in just a few minutes, but you hang on and we'll get all the information from you about this, and we'll post it on the Facebook page so the people that want to attend in the local area can go there, and we'll try and pin it to the top so it stays current, and people that need a ride or only want to be there for part day or would like to, they're going to be there in the morning, that they don't want to stay and listen to Sheriff Lofi. They've heard him speak before. I'm sorry, Sheriff. The one speech I heard was kind of dry. So I'd probably stay and listen to you though, because I'm kind of interested in this whole thing. Anyway, we'll have that stuff posted, and thank you for being on here today, Colorblind. We have a lot of stuff that we didn't get to today, but that's great. I think we had a very interesting show. I enjoyed it very much. I had my full attention the whole time, and this was good. I want to also make sure I give a big, huge thank you to Jules for the UCY network. It always pays to kiss up to the boss, and this is from the heart, though. This is from the heart. Drew and I love you, Jules. And thank you all the listeners. And we'll see you next week. We'll see you again.
Good night, everybody.
You're bound to break.